landscape on the median between 62nd Avenue again and 61 Court. Um, The project pretty much, back then, consisted of harmonizing with the US 1 corridor based on the landscaping uh, plants that were planted at that project. And we also were tasked to remove the existing black olives. In total, we were removing 22 existing small palms, 6 small palms, 41 Montgomery palms, planting 38 new trees, and then approximately 14,000 shrubs and ground cover. I have here the landscape architect who designed the project, so he can get into the quantities and type of trees and shrubs that we were proposing.
Good evening, my name is Keel Semler. I'm a landscape architect with GSLA Design. We were tasked with this project back in 2020. I think it actually maybe started in 2018 even. At the time, the directive from the city was to remove the black olives along US 1. As you know, we've been out there. There's the large mature trees that are there, because the idea was to, even though they're mature, the idea was to match the US 1 corridor. So there was, oaks and the shrub material that they use there. I think that project had just completed recently before we started this. There was black olives, pink tababuyas, there's some Chinese fan palms, solitaire palms, a number of different species for removal. We had a bunch that we were going to transplant, Montgomery palms, there's some thatch palm sables. This is basically just a plant list of all the new trees and shrubs we were planting at the time. A mix of mostly natives, a couple xeric species in there as well, but this plant list was basically derived from that US 1 project. Just some images of the shrubs and ground covers. Obviously the Sunset is, there's turn lanes and intersections everywhere, so everything is pretty much low material as you get close to the ends of the ends of the medians, but the center of the medians had some cocoa plum, saw palmetto, things that get a little taller. More images of that stuff. Estimated project cost was looks like $276,000. These are 2020 prices, which obviously we know have changed since then. But so there's a maintenance cost for that. That's what's described there. And probably this was calculated in 2020 as well.
That was a maintenance cost that we requested our current landscaping maintenance company to provide us a cost for what it would cost to maintain this type of project.
And that was 2024 numbers, correct?
Yeah, that was June of 2024.
Okay, excuse me on that. And something that we've been discussing internally is to sort of relook at the project that was proposed at the time, come up with an alternate. Something that we've noticed, there's been kind of two things. One was after the US 1 plants were installed, it was right after that we took this over and started this, so we hadn't seen what survived versus what struggled out there. So some of the plant materials we would like to, if we can, change up to make sure we use the stuff that thrived and not the stuff that didn't make it or stuff that was a maintenance headache. Another thing that I wanted to discuss was kind of the directive of removing the existing trees to plant the trees that were along US 1. Something I would like to do, I guess I'm a little bit like the Lorax here, I'm speaking for the trees, but the black olives, we all know if they stain and you don't want one over your car or driveway. However, in a median, there's landscape underneath and the asphalt is black. So they're a native tree, they don't really pose any issues. And what's out there now, they're large, mature, they provide shade. And I know from experience, unfortunately for projects I've done, neighbors and residents don't like it when big trees get removed. Unfortunately, I've had to do that before, but it's always trouble. So I want to kind of propose to you guys to maybe, if we can go back and rethink that and maybe keep some of that material and introduce shrubs and other things from US 1 that will obviously complement that. But I think keeping the existing mature canopy would be, a nice thing to do. And it's, the way the realignment has been done, it's not like we're damaging them or can hurt them. Most of them can stay. So anyway, that's just a point of discussion that we kind of like to see happen, but, you know, it's changed since we initially did this, but just food for thought. Okay, you wanna take on that?
So the next step is, once mayor and commission provide us a direction on what changes you want to make to the existing plans, we'll go ahead and proceed with that. We would need to request a redesign from our landscape architect firm, and a cost proposal for that. And then that will come back to you all for approval. Once the design is complete, we're estimating 3 months?
Definitely.
2 to 3 months maybe for redesigning the project. We will put it out for solicitations and construction solicitations. And then, once we receive the bids, we'll provide the lowest bid for recommendation to construct the project. So that's pretty much the timeline, and what's next on the project.
Thank you. I have a question, and I don't know if it's a you question or a you question. We have been working on trying to get an RFP for a landscape architect to be our landscape architect so that we can redo the vision for the entire city. I wonder if it's not prudent to have this wait for that, so this doesn't stand alone outside of whatever we decide as a city is going to be the look as it relates to trees and shrubbery and all of that. I look to you, Mr. City Manager, because you're the one I had the most recent conversation with.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. And you are correct, and we currently do have an RFP out for a landscape master plan. Notwithstanding, we're looking for opportunities that we may do some very sort of specific improvements that could start before then, just because that may take a while. And some of that may be in general. It may not necessarily be all site-specific. It would be like the type of plant material we would want to use in certain locations. So it could be an approach. It could be, we hold and wait. But given that I, once I understood that this project had been designed and had gone to that extent, I wanted to bring that option. We've had a similar conversation that relates to what I'll call our two parkways, 84th Street and 53rd. Both of those are a little different element because they're kind of like a linear part. And we tried to look at potentially, we have requested proposal on what it would take to maybe take a look at those and design something for those two particular parkways outside of the great master plan, just because A, it could take a while, and B, it may be in general. So obviously, whatever we would do, we want to have some synergy between them, but notwithstanding, it could be an approach that we hold off and wait for that process to mature if you want to.
Thank you. Do any of you have any questions for the gentleman?
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much for giving the presentation. Thank you so much for coming back out after all of these years. I'm very interested in potentially beautifying Sunset Drive. It's the entrance to our city from the west, probably the most popular entrance. While we've maintained it very well, you can certainly see a lot of inconsistency that exists within the design. Unfortunately, I think it stands out for those reasons in the wrong ways. And I knew there was a plan design already. I think a lot of what you would be doing seems to be more common sense oriented, right? We're already talking about not removing mature trees. We're talking about putting shrubs in, things like that. I guess I just wanted to ask maybe the landscape architect's opinion of the condition of Sunset Drive and how it compares maybe to some of our neighboring cities. For instance, I know Lejeune, Douglas Road, Ponce, they all have very, very well designed medians with shrubbery with, it's very intentional. So what would you say the condition is at this point, which is obviously very similar to the condition it was when you first designed it?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere is different, but the master plan, I think, is a great idea because, what you want to do first is sort of go down and evaluate. We were basically focused on the median, but, if you look at the adjacent, the north and south at the sides of the street, there's a lot of areas where you don't have pedestrian crossing, that there's, right now there's some trees that aren't healthy or doing well in little tree grades. And there's no reason why you couldn't cut out the concrete and make a, 5-foot landscape strip so there's more root zone and, make it more successful for trees, and then, maybe establish criteria for, if you do new projects, you can do structural soil under the concrete so trees have a little more root space. If I was to approach this again, ideally, like I said, there's a bunch of mature trees out there, so you could kind of find a way to harmonize that with new stuff and make it more consistent without losing it. So, maybe, you have a cluster of black olives, and then you do a stretch of oaks, then another cluster of black olives or something else, and sort of, harmonize everything. Maybe even those existing trees, you could have a consistency of shrubs along the base, so it's still visually, is kind of harmonious. And, there's areas, it's basically, you've got to go through and evaluate. So right in front of City Hall, there's the median with all the big date palms, which is beautiful, but there's, shrub area and then a little area with concrete strips and gravel. It could just be nice, consistent shrubs. The planter under the under the Metro Rail, there's some stuff in there that's a little weaker that could be nicer. There's definitely areas where you can focus on doing a punch or,
Yeah.
basically just talking how we do master plans, palms in the corners, things like that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then the last thing, and really the reason I wanted to hear more about this and maybe push it forward is, this just happens to be one of the many sort of plans that never really took off, got off the ground, never really broke ground on doing any kind of improvements there. And while I do think a master plan is a prudent thing, I would love to be able to do something, especially when it comes to maybe landscaping, where we could be a little more hands-on, a little bit faster, to be able to get something planned for Sunset Drive and then expand it out from there. I know that it's prudent to look at the big picture, but just like a lot of the things here, we're talking about plans that'll be 3, 4, 5 years down the line, where maybe this commission's composition is different, or maybe the priorities change. It'd be great for the residents who have paid a lot of tax money over a long period of time to be able to see these sort of long-needed improvements on especially our main roads, the county roads, the roads that are really kind of our city's front yard, so to speak. That's where everybody sees and gets an idea of who we are and what our reputation is. Sunset Drive, 64th, Miller, things like that, where we can do things. So.
Just for purposes of the mayor, since I was out of town, I didn't have a chance to talk to the mayor about it. The item came forward as a result of a conversation with Commissioner Corey, who had explained that he thought that there had been a project. I didn't really fully comprehend that it actually had been a design project that went to commission. So we just put it on the agenda to reintroduce it and get some guidance before we spend any more money or time and effort, just to kind of gauge an interest. And so that's why this is before you, just to have this conversation, get some input as to if there's an interest. And the vice mayor had just asked a question right before you walked in, Mayor, about, since we're looking to do a landscape master plan and there's RFP out, should we wait for that? That question was posed. And, but that's why this is before you. It's something that had been discussed previously by the commission, and a portion of the project was a realignment of 62 Avenue is what went forward. The landscaping aspect did not, but we didn't really want to spend a whole lot of effort on it unless this commission had an interest in moving forward, so.
First, let me apologize for being late. My apologies. Glad to make it. Before I jump in with any thoughts, Commissioner Liebman, did you want to speak on?
Certainly, just a quick question in terms of jurisdiction. Talking about the Metro Rail planters.
Who maintains them, Commissioner? What's the question?
Right. My question is, I'm speaking to you. It's pretty simple. You just said you wanted to change the foliage in the Metro Rail planters. So is that our jurisdiction? Are we able to do that?
Perhaps, yeah, that was
Yeah.
in the original plan, I think.
We currently have an agreement from, all the way from Dixie, right? To the city border, through Florida Department of Transportation. So we use Brightview as an outsourced company that does the maintenance, but it's via an agreement with FDOT for us to maintain the median on Sunset, and US 1 for that matter, too.
Okay. Further questions or comments from my colleagues? Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
If we're not waiting for the master plan, can we at least look and see what is going on around us so that we don't hit like culture shock? You move from the Gables into South Miami and then into Pinecrest, and for lack of another way of saying it, I don't want to look like the weed section of the landscaping. So
Second that
whatever-
motion, yeah.
Yeah, so whatever it is needs to be beautiful in the same sense that those other cities are beautiful. So you don't go, wow, we got here. Okay, we're gone.
So, Mr. Manager, just to level set, and Commissioner Kai, I'll recognize you right after. You mentioned there is an RFP out for a landscape master plan designer?
That's correct.
Okay. And when is that process set to close? 24th of July?
24th of July.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware, so that's good news. Commissioner Kai, did you?
Were you aware?
I've just been made aware, so we will be submitting for that.
So going back to the semantics of the question Vice Mayor had asked, you know, whatever route we decide to take, since you already done the design, do you consider this a full redesign, or is this something that you can leverage, something you've already done?
No, the shrub layouts and rejuvenation of the irrigation, like new head layouts when we do this, has already been done. Really, it'll just be putting the trees back that we were gonna take out, and eliminating the new trees in those spots, and just swapping out shrub species. So the design, the layout, the shape of all the shrub beds stays. It's just, you know, what we had, bulbine should be something else now, or there's like 2 species, I think, that were weak from US 1 that we would just swap out. So it's not a total redesign. And we've already surveyed it and done all that stuff. We have sheets set up. It's just swapping out species and keeping the existing trees.
And I know previous commissions to current commissions, some things change here and there. I think that one thing that you'll notice, and I know Aurelio knows this, is that one of the things that we've been consistent here on the commission is that we love mature. We love canopy. We just did a study, we saw that we lost canopy as a city. So canopy for us is pretty important. Hopefully I'm speaking for all of us here, but
Amen to that.
I think it's important that you understand, you know, if we move forward with this, that you understand canopy is really important. There's new buildings popping up throughout the city, and you'll see that changing through the next 5 years. Take that into consideration. Some of the landscape designs that we've seen come through here, they're not the greatest. So if we can complement or help out and, you know, doing these type of designs and drills, you know, just make sure you're conscious about doing that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have a question from my colleague here. Madam Vice Mayor, you had a question about
Yeah.
presentation?
I just don't know if any of you guys have seen what this layout would be.
Yeah, there was a PowerPoint, I believe it was the layout that was in the PowerPoint, Mr. Carmenates?
Like,
So we had the species in the
Okay.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, so I don't think we had a plan sheet that actually had the,
That's correct.
okay, so if we can, yeah, if you could do us a favor, Mr. Manager, and with staff's help, circulate copies of that. I know it was a comment I had to the deputy manager when she briefed me this week on the item. I had a couple questions from what was in the PowerPoint, and there were some references to maintenance escalations, about $24,000 a year. Can you, I didn't understand what the source of the escalation was, if you can dive into that for me a little bit.
Sure. So that was basically based on the proposal that we have right now on the design. We went out, we reached out to our, landscape maintenance company, and they gave us the cost to maintain that particular design.
Okay, so the existing design has a $24,000 annual maintenance cost associated with it. Okay, now, if we were to change out the species to use stuff that's, I'm assuming that's because it's water principally, or are these drought resistant, or I forget what the xeriscape style plants, what kind of plants, or what kind of shrubs do we select for this particular design? And is that the reason, is the species selection driving the cost of the maintenance in part?
So, yeah, the species selection was based pretty much to mirror what was planted along US 1.
Okay,
I think they're drought in time.
Yeah, for the most part, it's native plants or xeric plants, so they're all, drought tolerant.
okay,
Maintenance just comes from, because it's a roadway, you have to prune, make sure no overhang, and it's
okay.
fertilizing,
I just-
replacing stuff.
I wanted to understand whether or not the selection of the species, because I thought I saw something in the presentation deck that was prepared that you were recommending possibly alternating or switching species. And I didn't understand what we were contemplating switching out, and whether that was the reason there was a escalation of the maintenance. So
Yeah,
basically, what we have is as close to maintenance-free as we were ever going to get.
Correct.
Okay.
There's never no maintenance,
Okay.
but it's
Yes.
low maintenance.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes,
it's
sir, you're
also, I'm sorry, like, right now, it's pretty barren, so they just go in and mow.
No, I
Right,
know that
and
the condition's
so-
not a condition I'm happy about, so that's, but I wanted to understand whether, because again, the presentation, I just say this and not intend to be a criticism, but a comment, really. The presentation, in terms of understanding what the recommendation left me a little bit unclear. So, just, Mr. Major, we can kind of button that up, so I kind of know what point we're
It was
getting
really to
to.
get input, it was really introduce what was designed previously and understand, hey, is there an interest in going in this direction? If there is, then we would tweak, the design and bring it back as a design.
I mean,
So it was introduction.
By way of comment, I think it's, look, I've been wanting to do these improvements since the day we got up here. I think if we have a plan that's ready, I would say let's figure out how we move it forward. And I think, it should help inform the work of the consultants that we're hopefully going to hire through that design, through that selection process. And maybe this is an aesthetic we want to replicate in a variety of different conditions. I mean, I leave that to the experts. Commissioner Kaye.
Not the expert, but I have another question. So, this is based on the 2020 design, correct? You have not incorporated anything that we just spoke about, whether it's canopy and all that stuff. So I think what we need to take back to the manager and his team is, if there is a redesign or some type of what that looks like, that's not in this proposal at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure that's
But
clear. 'Cause
to clarify your clarifying question, we're also talking about leaving the mature black olive trees
yeah,
in
but
place.
That wasn't in this design.
I know it's not, so we're talking about leaving I want to, because I got here late, I apologize. Want to understand, we're talking about leaving the mature trees in place, not removing them.
That's correct.
This is this is a condition where, black olives, maybe on sidewalks that are traversed here, probably a pretty good spot to keep them. Rather keep the mature trees. But that is what we're talking about, correct? Keep, okay. So I am clear now.
Yeah, not only keep, I think we want to add to. Like, the idea that this design was taking out the black olives. We want to make sure we incorporate those and add more canopy to that.
Yeah, from my perspective, in the future, I'd like to see less palm trees, right? And more shade-bearing trees, whatever the species is that makes sense, depending on the location. To the extent that this design would need to be modified for that. Personally, I've also said I'm a big proponent of sometimes less is more. I'd rather get, fewer small DBH trees and some larger specimen trees. Even though it's a bit more expensive, it kind of just, in terms of the visual impact, the immediate return or relief it provides, I think is very value accretive for the city. So that's certainly my thinking. I think we generally, depending on the cost and where we can land on projects, probably a sentiment that we all share at some level.
He did talk about that before you got
Okay.
here. He mentioned keeping the black olives, adding maybe oaks and black olives again, and kind of cycling.
Cycling
through.
that way, yeah. Okay. Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
One thing that we all need to be cognizant of, I believe, as we run through this, I think it's a good idea. I just think we need to make sure that this is something we want to prioritize as we work towards trying to prioritize the hometown area. So not that they have to be mutually exclusive, but I think when we're thinking this through, the dollars need to make sense so that we're not diverting from what is our priority.
Excellent point. And just to the manager, is this project funded? I don't think it is in our capital budget, correct?
No, we have sort of bucket categories of landscaping. So in this case, we would tap those specific line items, which were put in the budget specifically for these kind of projects. Obviously, as it relates to Sunset Drive improvements, that project will have some sort of cost to it that will have to come back, and we're putting some money away for that. So there's a different pot of money.
And what was the estimated cost for the 2020 design when it was developed?
About 250, was it?
About $280,000.
Yeah.
Okay, $280,000.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and just to be clear, we can apply tree fund dollars to this potentially, right? Which I think has over 100,000 in it.
We could, I mean, yeah, it definitely would qualify for it. So we have pots of money that we have allocated specifically for these type of projects, including a master plan and other projects. In this case, obviously, we didn't want to spend money on a redesign until we got some sort of feedback that this commission was interested in moving forward.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just for an FYI and for the commission, I know there's a lot of, there's currently a revision or a look into, and maybe the city manager can follow them up on me, but there's a plan coming down the pipeline to give us a recommendation on what to do with the tree fund and the allocation of funds and how much the penalties are and so forth, because I think we've been very lenient. So you'll see that coming through. just
Okay.
an FYI.
Okay, so any final comments? So the direction of the manager is to bring this back for our consideration. We want this as part of our budget process? As a possible capital project, or do you want to see this as a standalone item? I'm sorry.
So we have money in the current budget that once that design comes back, if that's a desire and it gets approved, then we would bid it out.
Okay.
That we could use current funding, this year fiscal money, for this project,
Okay, understood.
if that's.
Is that the direction, colleagues?
That would be my preference.
Okay, so can I get a motion then to direct the manager to bring a revised design back?
I move the motion.
Is there a second? Second by the vice mayor, it looks like?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Just didn't wanna- don't worry.
Are there anyone in opposition to the request? Seeing none, I'm going to do it by unanimous acclamation then and say that direction has been given. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have one other presentation, and that's Mr. Diaz. You're recognized to update us on the modifications to the city's website.
Good evening to all. Brandon Diaz, Communications and Marketing Manager for the city. We're here today to present you guys the new city website that has recently been redesigned and redeveloped. One of the topics of conversation that I got brought on board, and one of the things that we've been talking about since I've been in this position, is creating a best-in-class city when it comes to communications and marketing. One of the steps in the right direction of that is our new city website, along with its features and its new improvements. So I'll go ahead and without further ado, allow the presentation to begin. Good evening, residents, mayor, commissioners, city manager, city clerk, and city attorneys. We are thrilled to announce the launch of our newly redesigned City of South Miami website. Our goal is to create a more user-friendly, informative, and accessible online presence that better serves our community and enhances our communications with residents, businesses, and visitors. Some of the new features and improvements included on the redesign of the website are a modern design with a new and improved homepage and overall look and feel. Our new design is clean, intuitive, and mobile-friendly, ensuring a seamless experience on all devices that also features video content highlighting the city of South Miami. Enhanced navigation. The revamped menu structure makes it easier to find information quickly, as well as a site-wide integrated search bar. How can we help? Whether you're looking for city services, upcoming events, or contact information, everything is now just a few clicks away. How do I? Whether you're looking to pay a bill, apply for a permit, or contact the department, this website tab is designed to help you navigate city operations effortlessly. Shop SoMe, our new and interactive business directory that provides detailed information about city shops, eateries, entertainment venues, and all South Miami businesses. My SoMe portal. Residents can now access a variety of online services, including submitting a service request, online forms, website notifications, important links, and online payments directly through this online portal. Community profile, the one-stop destination to dive into the intricacies of South Miami's local economics and demographics. Employee portal, this secure and user-friendly section is dedicated to providing city employees with access to essential resources, important updates, and convenient tools to support their daily work. Police to Citizen portal. This online interactive platform allows for residents to access South Miami Police services and information easily. Department videos. We will now be creating video content for each city department that will highlight their operations and their impact on the day-to-day basis they have on the residents of the city of South Miami. And now you see a preview. Yeah, this is the part where we have to transition over to the video.
I noticed the emphasis.
No pressure, John.
We're just all watching here, but it's okay. So then the next segment is gonna be showing you guys a piece of content that's gonna come up. So we're gonna work on videos for each of the different departments for the city that will showcase pretty much the operations for each of the city departments. So I'll go ahead and start with the Public Works Division. Engineering is the first video piece that we have done. And the goal is to create each of these different, this type of content for each different department.
Public Works breaks down in several different divisions, motor pool division, solid waste division, also streets division, and building division. We take care of the right-of-ways, such as the swells, the different swells in different areas throughout the city. We also maintain potholes, we do the tree trimming. We pretty much beautify the city. We have this app called Zomi Connect. Our app is so great because we respond to residents within 24 or 48 hours. The reason why we're so quick to respond because we do have staff in-house that allows us to take care of everything immediately.
As an office support for the Public Works Department, I'm the one that answers the calls from residents, contractors asking questions, let's say of a missed garbage, if they want their trash holes to be filled, if they want their garbage container to be either replaced or they got their garbage container stolen.
We deal with many kind of permits, MOT permits, maintenance of traffic, sidewalk permits, driveway permits. Basically, anything from the sidewalk to the roadway, Public Works Engineering Department handles as far as, permitting is concerned.
This is a city of pleasant living, and we continue to strive to keep it that way.
Try and play the rest of the wrap up of the presentation. Yeah.
Here's the top 10 places where everyone is moving in the United States in 2024. And we're going to deep dive into the best states,
If you
the
want,
best
I can
cities.
Just pause it there, I'll wrap it up. So that's
That was funny.
Flawless presentation.
of our first video for the City of South Miami's Public Works and Engineering Department. This new city website will greatly improve our ability to serve and engage with our community. Thank you for your time, and I hope this presentation was informative. Please feel free to ask me any questions that you may have on the site.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Colleagues, any questions?
No, I just want to say I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to say, great job. I know how difficult it is to build a website, every aspect of it, from the design to the content to the coding to launching it, from transferring all the other pages over. There's just a million things that can happen and go wrong. You did a great job. Mobile responsive site, great UI, UX. You guys did great, and it's great representation of the city.
Thank you. I was waiting for the SEO question.
No, it's all right.
Thank you.
We'll do that off
Thank you.
camera.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That
Steven?
looks great.
Thank you guys very much.
Congratulations. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have an add-on item this evening?
Yes, one.
Okay, if you could read that, please.
Yes, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, resetting the second regular meeting in July 2024 to July 18, 2024.
Okay. Any objection to the item being added on? Okay, seeing none, we'll take that up during resolutions. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 18th? Oh, we're deferring that? My apologies. So we will show the minutes of June 18, 2024 as deferred, and we will move on to the city manager's report. Mr. Manager? Or Madam Manager? Good evening.
Good evening. Pretty much just event updates for you guys tonight. For starting July 1st, the Senior Center is extending its hours to 3 p.m. So that'll allow for some afternoon activities. They have dominoes, crafts, indoor bowling, a lot of fun stuff planned. On the event side, obviously, we have our big one coming up, 4th of July. That's at Palmer Park. Starts at 5 p.m. Fireworks are at 9 p.m. We have several live bands. There's going to be a kid zone. There are going to be a lot of food trucks and vendors, so it's going to be a good time. We invite everybody to come out, carpool if you can. Parking is tight. July 13th is Rio's Bike Rodeo that's hosted by the South Miami Police Department. That's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's going to happen on the same street where we host SOMI Second Saturdays. It's going to feature different bike challenges for kids, so they're going to have different courses, bike safety checks, helmet giveaways. And then following that, 5 to 10 will be SOMI Second Saturdays. This one's going to be themed. It's going to be a country night, so we have a country DJ. There's going to be some line dancing. Moving forward, we have some fun themes going on, so we invite you all to come to that. That's the end of the manager's report tonight.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Madam Manager.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. One minor matter. I believe this commission had previously, we had presented a conflict of interest issue that we had with Baptist Hospital, South Miami Hospital. I believe we had spoken about it, but I don't think it ever made it into the minutes. So I am again requesting that any conflict of interest be waived. Just to give you a little background, another one of our partners represents or has represented Baptist from time to time. We do, obviously, South Miami Hospital has a lot of applications pending. They have another application pending now before the Design Review Board, and they are proposing an ordinance at this time. So it came up again. Baptist had already waived it. We thought that you had waived it formally, but I guess not. So I guess I'm asking that you consider a waiver of that conflict of interest.
And again, I got distracted. I apologize. This is the waiver, the ordinance related to
The urgent care facility.
urgent care facility. Okay.
And they have their facility on 62nd and Sunset. I don't presently do any work in this Lilly for Baptist Hospital. So
Understood. I just wanted to clarify what the
Absolutely.
matter was. Okay. Questions? Okay. If there are no questions, can I get a motion to approve the waiver of the conflict mentioned by council?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by the Vice Mayor, a second by Commissioner Kaye. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonniche,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Waiver passes 5.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we will open up the floor to public remarks. First on the list this evening, Ms. Gray Reed, you're recognized. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I might be the only one. Anyway, I am on the Green Task Force, and I want to say I'm delighted that you're planting Sunset Drive, and that I think the Green Task Force would love to be part of that process too, because we had very good luck with the US 1 planting when we involved the landscape committee, a citizen landscape committee. So, you know, I don't want to hold things up, but I think it would be great if we ran it by the Green Task Force.
It's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Second thing is about the recycling. I think it's important for us to keep recycling it once a week, because it sends a message to the residents that recycling is as important as trash removal. And recycling is our future. You know, that I think it's important for us to encourage it and to give the residents a chance to, you know, to consider both the trash and recycling as equal sort of components. So really, that's all. I think it's important for the city to take a stand on this, and in fact to encourage the county to do more recycling rather than more and better rather than less. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Well, it's construction of something. Yeah.
I think the chief is going to ask them to stop if we can. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you jumping into action.
If you could arrest them, that would be great.
The man of action there, yeah. Tell them to give us an hour. We hopefully will not be too long. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to come before this commission on any item? The floor is open for public remarks. please come forward at this time. Do we have any other lists for public remarks? No? Anyone online?
No, no one's online.
Okay, seeing no one in the chamber, no one online, we will close public remarks, and we will move on to the next item. That is commission reports. Colleagues, anything you'd like to share for the good of the order? I have just a brief statement, because I missed the opening of the meeting. Anyone recognize? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to share with everybody that I met with the chief yesterday. I'm hoping to open up our unhoused outreach meetings that we hold monthly to the public and extend that to the commission as well. I think if anybody did show up, we might have to advertise that, but we do have those meetings once a month in the library, and we're going to be opening it up to residents and business owners to be able to offer any help that they can and feedback and identifying any individuals, things like that. So just to let everybody know that we are going to be opening those meetings up.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to share anything?
What is the commission report?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shikai, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things, at the elderly facilities, we celebrated Father's Day with our grandpas. Some of us went out there. It was a really cool event. You know, we had Miami-Dade Fire Rescue taking up temperatures and blood and cholesterol tests, good music, good food. Had a great time out there. So I think as we continue to move on as a city, incorporate our communities, and they really do love us, and it was a really good time. Secondly, I had a meeting last week with the Underline, and one of the things I've been working on is to continue to improve worker relations from our community with a lot of our vendors and contractors. We have a lot of work going on in the city, and it's going to continue. And I really want the local community to really, and going to the vice mayors, keep it kind of together with our own people. So I'm really working on getting a lot of a sheet of employees, different work sets, whether it's supervisors, inspectors, electricians. I partnered up, and there's pictures, and there's a lot of marketing going to start happening now. But I was there with Meg Daly. I met with the contractors. I'm going to be working with Commissioner Regalato's office in Coconut Grove and the rest of the area, so we can really build a pipeline and a single place where people can come in, look for our people, and really start hiring, mentoring, apprenticeships. So I'm pretty happy about the first meeting. It turned out really well. You'll see pictures coming soon. So that was the underlying kind of project that I've been working on. And lastly, just, you know, we've been going back and forth in some of the boards, and I want to give you guys an update on the Unique Abilities Board. We've added people from idea stage. We have speech pathologists coming on board. We have musical people coming on board. And really what we're trying to do is build a community by themselves where they set their own goals, achievements. And Commissioner Lehman stated this earlier, which I thought, you know, it was something that we're working on. So I appreciate the feedback. But it's cool to take off, and you see the community really enjoy it, and they really want to be a part of it. So I encourage the commission and our staff to continue to work with these boards and cultivate them and encourage them to do more for our community, because it really is an extension of what we want to do for the city. So those are the three things I want to talk about today.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
One thing that Commissioner Kaya doesn't mention is at the Father's Day event, he brought his son, who helped serve meals and talk to people and just generally be a joy. And I think that the seniors were very happy to see that. So thank you for kind of bringing your family in to making that happen. And to the Parks and Rec team, we keep hearing about these great events that the seniors are doing, and we need to get credit where credit is due. It's definitely 100% them, and I'm thankful, and I'm especially happy because they're very forward-thinking. Last year at the 4th of July event, there was a tent for seniors and food and all of this stuff, and we were like, wow, it's so hot, we should have fans next year. And it just occurred to me out of nowhere the other day, and when I reached out, they were like, oh no, we already
got
did
it,
you.
yeah.
We already did that. And so I think we sometimes spend time talking about the things we haven't done or should do, but we don't spend enough time talking about how amazing our team is. And so thank you very much to our Parks and Rec team and to Public Works, which helps them put it all together. Thank you very, very much for taking care of our seniors the way that you do.
Through the manager, one more through the mayor.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about the community as well is that it was our mayor's birthday last week, and the community themselves set up a little cake event and some food, so it was cool how they give back to the mayor. They think he's the most handsome one, so whatever. Happy
Mayor
birthday to
Sadly
the
was thinking,
mayor.
thank you.
Happy birthday to the mayor, and everything's accomplished for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and I echo the sentiments of the vice mayor. Kudos to our staff on all the good work you guys do. I just wanted to share very briefly, if no one else had anything, condolences to the family of George Green, who was a long-serving employee of the city of South Miami, over 44 years of service to our community. I was privileged to go to the memorial service today, and I've never had a chance to meet him, but certainly learned a lot about him today, and got to interact with his lovely wife, Marta Elena. Another South Miami Medellin connection was revealed to me, at least today. She's a Medellin native, so we talked quite a bit about Colombia, Medellin, even our Sister Cities program, Commissioner Liebman. So, and it was wonderful just to hear of George's selfless service, particularly in comments by one of our own, Randy, who regaled us with quite a few stories about George and what a formidable voice he was as a member of our union, the union, and running the department. And even after his retirement, his continued service to make sure that things continue to run well in South Miami. Among the things I'll quickly share was his penchant to basically wear his old mechanic's uniform after he was retired and go out onto Sunset to just randomly pick up debris that was on the street. Just someone who's very committed to our city and who is sorely missed by his friends and family. And I just wanted to make sure we were all aware of his service, that the community was aware of his service, that we're grateful to him, and that our prayers are with his family, obviously, in this very difficult time. At some point, we'll get Mr. Manager, I'd like to kind of connect with you and a couple members of the staff to see if there's something we can do to honor him more formally here as a city. But thank you for the few minutes of to honor George. With that, let's move on to a couple of discussion items. I think the first one is on Spartan mosquitoes, and I think, Madam Vice Mayor, that's your item. Would you like to share with us your thoughts?
Sure, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this was not my idea. I'm actually, for lack of the nice way of putting it, ripping off our former mayor, Mayor Stoddard, who was, I think, very clever in how he dealt with mosquitoes and, all kinds of pests, I guess is the way I could put it. We all, as homeowners, a while back received these little kits if we wanted them to help kind of stave off the mosquito invasion, and they worked really, really well. And so I started thinking recently, gosh, we're not really doing anything, and it's been so rainy. I always gauge by how much rain there is how many times I've had to empty the water in the pool, and it's been quite a bit. And then we started hearing about dengue in the Keys and in a part of South Florida somewhere, and so we reached out to Jeremy of Spartan, and he is willing, to sell us these massive amounts of it, even though I don't know how, but Mayor Stoddard got it for free. Whoop, whoop to him. And so I just wanted to kind of bring it to our attention because we have to do something. One of our city attorneys, Ms. Arango, pointed out that the county also has a mosquito department, but having never seen them or even really heard of them, I can't really speak to that. But I think if nothing else, we should look into what we can do, whether it's the Spartan mosquito little things, along with reaching out to the county and having them spray. We need to do something, because doing nothing, which is what we're doing right now, is not working.
Anyone have questions of the Vice Mayor?
Do you want to see? I know that there's a little video or something. Do you have that, John, so you can see?
Well, there's someone in the audience that has his ear. Maybe we can get Phil Stoddard to come back here and help us out with that.
Yeah, right, just maybe. Or, if it's, he might not, I haven't spoken to him about it. I just didn't want to take credit for something that he's done. I don't think that's right. But if we can look at the mosquito thing. If he's interested in talking about it, I'm sure
I do it all the time.
there's always a way to do that. But I at least want us to start thinking about it. It's so simple. And it actually works. I had them at my house. It actually really works.
Okay, so just a couple questions. So is this, the idea would be for us to purchase these and distribute them to households? And do we have a sense of what the unit cost would be?
Yep. The unit cost of a pack of 2 tubes is $13. They could lower it to $12.75.
And how many would you typically use in a typical household?
Well, if you look at the video, actually showed you like a regular sized property uses 2 of them. So each house, unless it's a very large property, does 2 of them. Maybe we start with reaching out to the county and seeing what they're doing, and then seeing if we can fit something like this in. Do we think this is the best? I just wanted to bring something up, because to come up and say, hey, we got mosquitoes, I think is like redundant.
And to the manager and I guess our city attorney, I know that, you know, other communities like the Keys have mosquito districts. I guess we've internalized that at the county, where I forget what department actually does spraying or on a proactive or reactive basis. I don't know if you guys have any information about how that service gets offered across the county, Mr. Manager, or you could shed some light on that?
Through Miami-Dade County and Public Works, and obviously, calling 311 does help. A lot of times when they get calls in and they log those, that generates calls for service that they may, and they have 2 types of operation. One is ground control, or the other one's aerial. And so depending on, you know, certain areas, you know, they decide what methodology to use. Obviously different than what we're looking at here. But that's their operation is either vehicle mounted and/or aerial spray.
But they only offer the aerial spraying, correct?
I'm sorry?
They only offer spraying as a
Correct.
localized spray, okay.
Correct. I mean, they monitor counts because they have these traps throughout locations in the county, and they monitor those traps, and based on that is how they determine frequency of spraying. But totally different than obviously a commercial product that residents may avail themselves of.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me with that is it's reactive. So we'd be having to kind of reach out to our populace and say, hey, reach out to somebody else to get some mosquito relief. I'm just trying to find ways for us to be proactive.
Further questions?
Would this be something we'd be able to do on like a lower scale, considering the distribution model might be people coming to pick up or something like that? You could just offer it and have people come and get it, and you could purchase a fewer amount of them, see if it was a popular program or.
Yeah, I mean, I just rough math. I mean, the Vice Mayor, we're thinking along the same lines. You know, it's about $54,000 if we bought 1 for each household. So I don't know if that's an expense we want to incur or not. Certainly, you know, there might be, you know, maybe something we want to actually try to message out and see if people feel there's a need for us to provide them, or maybe there's just a way to possibly leverage our buying power to allow people to access this at a much lower cost than they would commercially, and maybe not incur the entire cost ourselves. But I'm open to any direction you want to give the manager on exploring this further. I mean, I think it's certainly in many ways more attractive to me than the spraying, right? Because the spraying has its own environmental, other health issues that are attendant to that as well. So.
I agree. Maybe what we can do is we could, as Ms. Reed was so nice to point out, we can reach out to Mayor Stoddard and see how many did we buy last time. I don't know if we got 4,200 of them. Maybe we start with 500 of them and see where we land. Do people reach out for them? Maybe we could put it on our website and on our social media and see if there's interest while we have those conversations. Does that work?
Yeah, I would also maybe see if the sponsor wants to donate a certain amount and match whatever we buy, so we can, for them, it's probably as much a promotional opportunity as it is anything else. So, I mean, that would certainly be my suggestion.
Okay. Duly noted.
So, do you want to kind of suggest direction, and we can all decide whether?
I think that, I mean, as far as the discussion item is concerned, I think that we can reach out to Mayor Stoddard and see kind of where that conversation started. We can also reach out to the vendor and see if we can reach any kind of deal of buy one, get one, or even just get a discount on them and do a pilot of it.
Okay. Mr. Manager, do you need any more formal direction than that, or is that fairly clear?
we'll do a little more due diligence and come back with, maybe some pricing matrix or something that we could share. Obviously, given the amount, it would have to come back to this commission regardless.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Okay, M2, if you could read that to the record, please, Madam Clerk.
Driveways in single-family residential districts.
Okay, so it's just an item I wanted to bring forward for a quick discussion. Oh, John, if you can share some pictures for me. As I often walk my dog or drive around the city, I will snap a picture, and one of the trends that I know that's a little disturbing is the amount of driveways that are being kind of torn up to replace with gravel in order to meet the impervious requirements. I'm not particularly opposed to gravel, but in many cases, the conditions are, this is just the front yard of a home that's actually adjacent to Bob Walsh Park. You probably might be familiar, it's had a substantial addition that was built on it. It's a nice home. Others where they've added a gravel driveway. If you move to the next picture, the rest is improved with traditional tile.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Can we go back real
Yeah,
quick
please,
to-
go ahead, yeah.
Go back to?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Is that a trailer?
That's a trailer in the front yard of Bogue, because they're actually doing construction at the rear of the property, so I think they've moved it there temporarily. That's my guess. I've not seen it always there in the front when I was walking, but recently, that was a condition about 6 months ago. But you'll see here, what's happened is the driveway has been torn out, the asphalt, and we're placed with gravel in sections. There are other sections of the city where, in our neighborhood, Commissioner Liebman, you'll see that the driveways have been removed altogether and gravel's been left. If you can go back one slide, John. This is a condition I think is fine, where the gravel actually has a border on the edge of it. That's not certainly something that's required today. A lot of what I'm concerned about is the proliferation of gravel to kind of get around the impervious coverage requirements results in gravel being introduced into the right-of-way. And you have loose rock and material, in the street, not an ideal condition. Other cities require, if you're going to use gravel, it's permitted, but it has to have an edge or a border. There's a couple, I think there's one example where it was done fairly nicely in my neighborhood recently with a new home. Keep going. This is a neighbor who I think wanted to add a pool to the rear of their yard in the neighborhood. You can see there's a newly planted grass, which is the footprint of their old asphalt driveway that led to their garage, which no longer has any access from a driveway. If you go forward one slide, one more picture, there's my dog Milo making a cameo. There is the remnant driveway now that's left. So, a lot of the asphalt was torn out, I think, to kind of get below the threshold, even with what we've liberalized. And, again, I appreciate that they want to make use of their backyard, but I don't know that necessarily, without some thoughtful planning, is leaving the best condition at the front of the house, which obviously impacts all the neighbors. I just wanted to highlight the issue because I think some thoughts required in how we kind of meet this challenge. I think gravel can be a good solution. It requires probably an artful design. In other locations I've seen across the city, it's, again, spilling over into the right-of-way. I just like to make sure that we have some standards, nothing too onerous, give people plenty of options, but at least some standards in our code to deal with this kind of condition. So there's, I think, a draft ordinance that's been put together by staff. I have not seen the current version, but I think it hits most of the elements of what I'd like to see. I think the request today would be to refer that over to the planning board so they can discuss it and see if it makes its way to us with some final recommendations for possible adoption. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. That's the intent of today's discussion.
I have questions.
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
I always have questions. I actually read this and I pulled out the survey of my house because I have a circular driveway in my home. And I was like, well, if I were to do my circular driveway today, would I be able to do it? And the answer is no. I have a lot that it's, 109, I think, deep on one side and 116 wide on one side, but I live on a corner. So the front of my house is actually 91. And so even though I have all this space, I wouldn't be able to do that. So when we're doing this type of thing, right now, it shall be limited to one curb cut for 100 feet or less in lot width and 2 curb cuts for greater than 100.
So that's language I think staff has, my intent was to deal with the driveway condition. I'll give you one other standard that's there that for me was particularly important was the minimum width of the drive aisle. There was a condition in my neighborhood where a drive aisle was being proposed that was at points 4.5 feet wide, where there was a curve in the drive aisle around a tree. So you can imagine that navigating that condition, keeping the vehicle on the drive aisle was going to be impossible. And there's some gaps in our standards today. So again, I would say to you that conditions like yours, I'm open to having conversations about everything that's on that paper. My ambition was two things. One is I want to make sure that we had minimum drive aisles, that when cars are particularly navigating obstructions, you're expecting the cars to stay on either the gravel path or the improved asphalt or any other path. And then we're using gravel in particular because it seems to be more and more of a surface that people are incorporating. I think for reasons that they want to get more and more out of their real estate in terms of, impervious cover.
Of course.
Right? That it's being applied in a way that's not, spilling over into the street. Right? So those were my two main motivations for proposing any of the legislation. I don't want to take any ownership for that standard that you're referring. Okay?
Yeah, I just think that we need to look at what the realities are in the majority of our as-built homes before we subscribe to this, because if not, I think we leave a lot of people. My house, that driveway is from 1957.
Yeah, I know, and I certainly, personally would love to see you be able to rebuild it, improve it, repair it if you needed to.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be my main concern, because if
And
you
maybe,
don't have
maybe
it,
it's just a matter of grandfathering, legally permitted driveways, so that those standards don't apply to them.
Okay.
Okay? But I'm certainly open to that conversation.
all right, thanks.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I support your concern, but while you go through this process, just in my opinion, a couple things to be aware of is one is gravel, the only the motivation may not just be that it's pervious, it's also economical and it's attractive. I understand your concern is containing it. And then personally, right, it doesn't look good to have half and half of anything, but I happen to find gravel more attractive than the asphalt, personally.
I don't
in terms of
disagree.
aesthetics.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just think it's, what I'm seeing
So
is,
why someone would do that too, you have to question, right?
I think they're just trying to get around the standard that was the limitation in activating the backyard. And again, they're great people, and I have nothing against them trying to do that. I just want to make sure that we have the rules to, at least, I think the application there, I'd be much happier if it was just all gravel, frankly, with the appropriate edging, right? Because I think gravel is a perfectly fine application. Yes, sir. Commissioner Guy?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Are we sure that the current impervious calculations would impede on their current design?
That one condition I highlighted that had the no longer a driveway to the garage, I don't know. It certainly was done right before that was adopted.
Yeah, that's what I figured, okay.
I will say the home that's near Bob Walsh Park is a very large one that's being built. And plenty of lot there that,
That's a big house.
it's a big house.
I did speak to him, and he was
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I did that.
Yeah.
Talking and knocking on doors when we did, he was very adamant about it. So that's one of the reasons, why I started thinking about making that change. If, there's two things that bothered that particular person, was that and solar, but the current calculations, if we did it today, would have made his whole as well, so.
But again, I think
get it.
the concern is,
I get it.
people are using this application, and let's just make sure it's done in a way that's tasteful and value creative, not just to them, but to the neighborhood, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Further thoughts, questions? If not, can I get a motion to refer this to the planning board for consideration? I will move it.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So a motion by myself and a second by the vice mayor. All in favor? Do we need to take a roll call vote, or how are we doing this? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Show the item is referred unanimously. Okay, if you can introduce M3, please.
Modification of membership qualifications for the Unique Abilities Board to allow both residents and business owners of South Miami.
Mr. Guy, is this your item?
Yes, it is.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and introduce it.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a quick fix to the literature that on the legislation. We were very specific to homegrown or South Miami residents. I'm just adding, correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, we're adding that and, and businesses in the city of South Miami, correct?
Correct, business owners,
Business owners,
right.
correct, okay.
within the city.
That's all, Mayor.
Any questions of the sponsor? Madam Vice Chair, no? Commissioner Lieben?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you want to make a motion?
Well, if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to move the motion to make that change.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kai, a second by Commissioner Corey. Madam Clerk, I'm sorry, anyone in opposition to the item? Okay, show the item is referred unanimously. If you could read item 4, please.
Sorry,
Yes, sir.
Mayor, before we advance, the city attorney called me earlier and mentioned that there would be one more discussion item. Is that?
There is, yeah, that's going to be, I was just going to make the direction before the close of the meeting, but I'm happy to take it now if you want to discuss it.
Sir, that's up to you, and I'm going to, if you'd like to, I'll excuse myself following, or I can excuse myself now, but I did call the proprietor of the subject property following my conversation with the city attorney.
So let me just, we'll take it out of order here really quickly. Colleagues, you recall last meeting, we passed a resolution to authorize an RFP for Lot B, which is the parking lot just west of Sunset Place. Over the last few days, I was approached by the owner of the adjacent dry cleaning property, which when I became aware that it was on the market, spoke to their counsel. His name was Josh Miller, had a very pleasant conversation about their intention to sell. I think it would be value creative to the city and to them for us to consider pulling back on the RFP for maybe 30 days with the idea of possibly seeing if we can jointly dispose of both properties together. You all may be aware that the adjoining property to the dry cleaner, which is currently occupied by a pizza establishment and a Greek restaurant, is also on the market for sale currently. My thought was, and Commissioner Lieben, I guess you've had some conversation with them. Are they interested in they're interested in selling still? And what was your conversation, if you could share?
Well, certainly, but I was, should be more specific. I was referring to my conversation with the interior lot.
The interior lot?
That is
Oh,
the
you did.
conversation I had today.
Okay.
And when I proffered this idea to the commission, I've mentioned that both of these properties were in fact in play or on the market. So I'm not opposed to this. What's 30 days? Not only will both properties potentially be worth more, but it would be a better project for the city. But when I spoke with the proprietor, they said that they're just interested in recouping their initial cost. I don't know if that's the price they paid or plus carrying, right, transaction costs. I asked that question. They didn't specify, but what they said is they would be reluctant. I know they approached us, so I know this is in conflict with the information you've received in writing, try to go on, but they said that they would be reticent to tie up the property because then it would be off the market and they couldn't accept
any offers.
Right,
So,
and they're just looking to break even and get out.
okay. So
But it won't, but either way, I mean, we have nothing to lose.
Yeah, it was
30 days.
Again, I think the idea would be that, as soon as with a maximum of 30 days, just to try to engage them in some conversation, see if we could formalize terms and put something out together. I think it would make for a much better execution for the redevelopment of all 3 parcels to be done jointly as opposed to individually or whatnot. And if we can come to some understanding, reissue the RFP with that arrangement, some arrangement that would bind all 3 of us to at least seeing that process through. So if there's a willingness to consider that, I would just ask that we direct staff to temporarily postpone the issuance of the RFP and then maybe direct the city attorney to, with the city manager, to engage both property owners and begin discussing how we could move to issue a solicitation that would include both parcels. Yeah, I think the idea would be to see if we could just market, right now everyone's marketing the pieces individually, right? I think the sum of the parts is greater, or what the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right before I destroy another, whatever we call it, figure speech. But that's the intent behind this request, is to pull back.
And then I'd offer, because of relationship with the other 2 owners, to to make that introduction to either you, Mayor, or the city attorney.
I'm happy
Do
to
that
have you,
tomorrow.
make that connection for us, okay?
Just through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
So I've spoken to them as well, the owners of the establishments. And we also I got a letter of intent for the middle property, same what Commissioner Lehman's saying, so they're offering for sale as well. So there's two different opportunities here that we need to kind of investigate a little bit.
Yeah, my understanding was they were enlisting a broker to put it on the market. In the course of a few days, the expectations, demands dropped substantially. That all said, I'm not sure that it's a piece that I would particularly want to acquire per se. Maybe, I'm not sure that's a conversation we were interested in having. Certainly, if it is the will of this body to have that conversation, we can have it. My thought was simply to approach them about marketing the pieces together through a formal solicitation. Yeah.
The latter is much better than what's been proposed, so I agree.
Okay. So if further questions?
I just want to clarify so that I
Yes.
have it right in my brain. We have our square, the dry cleaner, and then the other two are owned by one owner. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3 lots.
Correct.
What I'm understanding that you're proposing is to then possibly amend,
The RFP to
The
include
RFP?
yeah.
but those purchases would be happening separate and outside of us, correct? So if they were going to be negotiating this RFP or putting in something for the RFP, they would independently be giving, a bid or whatever on those other properties contingent on them getting our lot.
So I think, again, not to get too in the weeds here, but I think they would probably have to communicate to us a minimum reserve price, almost like an auction where there's a minimum they have to get. Commissioner Liebman alluded to what one of the property owners is looking for, and then see how that would work out in this disposition scenario.
But we're not part of that process for those privately owned.
The idea would be, I think the idea would be to have to come up with a mechanism for the proceeds that would be bid for the entirety of the assemblage to be divvied up between the parties. And I would imagine that it would have to, in their mind, result in a minimum amount of proceeds for them to be bound by any particular bid. So let's just say that person in the center thinks their lot is worth not less than $2.50, right? If the proportionate consideration offered by a bidder does not result in them getting $2.50 in total compensation for their piece, they would not be bound to basically sell the piece, right? We could consider a disposition and execution just in our piece at that point in time, but at least it gives us the option for someone to come in and maybe make a bid that's attractive to everyone and meets everyone's minimum expectation.
Got you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So-
Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner
just a
Liebman,
couple things to that point, which are obvious, may not be all.
Yeah.
The property would really be in play would be the interior lot, because you can't buy the ends, right, and do something without the interior piece. And that said, the interior piece may have environmental issues. City piece has direct access. It's obviously larger. There's the pizza place, could argue has exposure from US 1, but not the way it's oriented. It depends on the direction. But then also and with this item, maybe you brought up cost recovery. It would be our city attorney, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, city attorneys, but this would be outside work. Would they share the cost with us three ways?
So, I think the respondents, in any scenario where we have a bid, the respondents would pay the cost recovery.
Okay.
So I think, I would suggest to us.
So it wouldn't be the
It wouldn't be,
the property
it wouldn't be the
owners.
property owners, it would be the respondents to the solicitation, as we would, right? Would get the benefit of the cost recovery provisions in the document as well.
Well, but we would be risk, because we'd have to pay the city attorney regardless of whether or not those owners accepted an offer or whether or not an offer came in.
I mean, I think it's a fair point, and it's a risk that we've got to discuss and whether it's worth taking or not. But I think, these are very preliminary conversations. Again, I just thought it would be worth turning the stone over. And, if we can't get to a point where people want to be reasonable in a short amount of time, we'll go out and do our own thing. I think certainly, I would say the center property owner has the most to gain from this conversation. Certainly the other bookend probably could trade well and do well enough. on its own. But I think just I think we had some anxiety on, I know this side of the dais about the solicitation, because there is the possibility to do something larger, better, possibly in terms of an execution. I didn't think that there was a willingness on the part of the owners to consider that. It seems that there's an opening, so I thought, let's just have the conversation, see where we end up. Okay?
All right.
So, can I get a motion to direct the manager and the city attorney to approach the owners about a possible joint disposition?
I'll move the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Pardon me, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just so we're clear, my understanding is these entities want to sell their properties?
yes,
So would we be talking about a sale of Lot B?
we would be talking about a sale as
We
well.
have it right now as a sale or a lease?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah. I think at that point, we would probably, when the RP came back,
it would be.
it would likely be solely for the purposes of a sale.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is,
thank you.
is that up for discussion, Mayor? Because I'm not necessarily sure about the sale yet. I mean, there's still opportunities for a lease there.
Yeah, so I think, I'll just address that. I think the difficulty is one of timing on the part of the other owners. So, my conversation certainly is the transaction for one of the owners was not one that evolved as they had hoped. And so they definitely are trying to see how they can maximize the return.
I understand.
I don't know if they're interested in having a long-term leasehold interest. And again, I leave it to the city attorney to tell me whether we can have a leasehold interest with a private party or whether that violates the Florida Constitution in any way. So there are questions of law that are at least novel to me, if not novel to other people, that I don't understand.
Sorry, just for the context of the conversation, it's a maximum 50-year lease at that site.
Correct, yes, yeah.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Forget about that.
But I would imagine it'd be, Commissioner Kaya, to your point, or your question, we'd have to consider a disposition exclusively. Okay? Mr. Manager, Mr. City Attorney, any questions?
No, just a comment
Yeah.
that depending on how this gets arranged, just to be mindful that given the property and its prior use, any issues, I don't know if an assessment has been made of the property. It could be environmental issues. So just that we're mindful that we don't take on, some of that.
No, I think we're not in a position where or nor do I want to be in a position where we are making ourselves responsible for any of the remediation costs. Attributable to that site, so I want to be clear that the idea is if they have an expectation of a net number of proceeds, if there are costs or there's a discount associated with the value because of the remediation, it's attributed to their portion exclusively. So that would be my preference, I think, the vote of the board.
I agree with you, Mayor.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Sorry, I'm busy
that's fine.
being mean to him here. Aye.
Okay,
Yes.
so the item passes 5-0. Okay.
All right, we need to speed this along so
Thank you,
Steve
Commissioner.
Gaia can watch soccer at 9 p.m.
I know.
So let's go.
Okay, M4, please.
Borrowing options and potential bond.
Okay, so this is my item. We've had some conversation about the possibility of a borrowing. We've talked about it in a number of presentations. The intent of this item would be to direct the city attorney to bring forward a question for our consideration at the next meeting and a recommendation on an amount that could be placed before the voters for their consideration in November at the general election. Any questions?
Yes,
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
of course.
Of course, it's
I have
fine.
Questions. One, I was kind of surprised to see this as a discussion item because this obviously something that you must have been working on for a while. So having it as a discussion item, I think leaves it open-ended, makes me a little bit nervous, makes me a little uncomfortable because we're discussing something we have no idea what it is, what it could include, and we're leaving ourselves
No, yeah, so
a
that,
very small period of time to have a discussion before we have to say yes to it at the next meeting.
so let me kind of walk you through my mental timeline. So I've had some conversation with the city attorney about this very issue. Unfortunately, for us to get anything on the November election ballot, it's got to be submitted to the supervisor election by July 26th at noon. Okay, so that leaves us a very small window. We've had a couple conversations about this. What this would do would bring forward the question, and ask us to approve the language of a question specifically. We can continue to evolve the program. I don't think it forecloses us from evolving a program that would be funded by this. But to the extent that we wanted to have that wrapped up completely before it went to the voters, in my mind, we have another question that is kind of the precursor question to this. Unfortunately, we can't wait to see the outcome of that question before we authorize this one, because the timing won't allow for it. But I have spoken to the city attorney, if we wanted to withdraw this question because that other question fails, right? And so essentially, it's kind of moot, I would say. Not completely moot, but certainly, much more difficult conversation to consider a borrowing under the existing rules. That's certainly something we can do. And I would say, by the same token, if we were not comfortable with the program or had not arrived at an understanding of a program that we want to fund via this authorization, we still have the ability to, by, late August, possibly ask that the item not be included on the ballot. So, Madam City Attorney, am I mistaken in my understanding, or am I correct?
Ooh, you're correct, Mayor. It can be withdrawn timely.
Okay, so we do have the ability to withdraw the item, but we don't have the opportunity to present it unless we take some action now.
And are we going to be privy along the ride, either via the city manager, us having a sunshine meeting, or discussions with the city attorney before this is actually on the agenda for the 18th, 14th?
18th would be the idea,
18th?
yes.
So that we are, before we have to vote on it, versed, comfortable, and have had whatever discussion it is we need to have, either as a group or with our counterparts, so that when that does arrive, that's not the point where we try to hash it out.
So I would say the language, I'm assuming, is going to be pretty straightforward. This is not as complicated a question as and again, to the city attorneys, you can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but, it'd probably be the same form question that you would have for any GOB offering at any other city.
Yeah, so basically, Mayor, it needs three components in the referendum question. The maximum amount of the bond, of the GO bond, the purpose for the bond to finance capital improvement programs are pretty specific, the public purpose behind it. And then we set out the maximum rate permitted by law. So the question would have the amount, the maximum amount, and the purpose of the program.
Okay, and will we be seeing that before we sit in these chairs in the next meeting, so that if we have questions or
So I want to be clear, the language of the bond, the language of the question, yes, okay? If you want to see, this is a question to you. You want to see the program, we have had a couple presentations on the elements in terms of needs. We can certainly have another conversation about what we would want to consider funding off that list.
Yeah, I think
through the
that-
use of proceeds like that, yes.
I think that would be best, just because that way then I think we're all agreeing to something that is concrete versus like an ephemeral kind of decision. I think not only us, but the residents should know the thought process behind whatever that is.
Yes.
Through the mayor. So one
Mr. Guy.
question to add to that. If there's something on the capital improvements or anything that was on the document that comes up, for example, we have the opportunity to acquire set asset. That's not currently, does that automatically eliminate that? And I'll give you an
So
example.
I just want to, and again, Mr. Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Madam City Attorney, so the program can evolve, right? The program, we're going to put down a series, our best understanding of what we would spend the money for. We can do it categorically, right? We talked about that before, and assign a dollar amount to that. We can list specific projects, right? But that does not preclude this current commission or any future commission from making modifications to that program, subject to public hearing, right? And I think enactment via ordinance, correct? Am I recalling my?
Yes, as long as it's within the program that's identified in the referendum.
Correct. So as long as, so for example, we have park improvement A versus park improvement B. So long as there's park improvements that are authorized generally or up to a certain amount and we stay within those thresholds, those parts are always interchangeable. So again,
Thank you.
Yeah, like we choose an amount and we choose a bucket.
correct. If we want to do that, or we can just say, we choose an amount and here are all the things that we would spend it on, right?
Yeah.
And what we may want to communicate to the public is our needs are this today. This is what the kinds of things we would spend it on, right? These are the kinds of things we would not spend it on. But those priorities, needs could change over time. Part of the reason that I want to bring this forward now is that I don't intend to have us authorize a borrowing or issue a borrowing in 2025. Obviously, I don't think our financial position is such that we could afford to do that without raising taxes substantially. But I think the ability to show the ability to borrow, right, allows us to begin to show the ability to match dollars at the federal and state level. And so that is, I think, the value of having the authorization issued today. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, to my colleagues to the left, the authorization does not expire, right? There's no expiration date on it. It expires when we've exhausted the authorization that's been approved by the voters. So let's assume we want to borrow $5. The day that we get to that $5 threshold, then the authorization expires. So it does give us the flexibility to match, and we can decide collectively when we want to take dollars down, what the right timing is based on what we can afford at that time.
Thank
Okay? You're welcome. Further questions?
No, I have a comment, Mayor.
Yes.
If we approve this as a commission and it goes out to the public for vote, we should figure out how to best communicate that to our constituents. So, you know, working in sunshine and really coming up with a plan so people really understand what we're trying to do. Communication to our constituents is not always the easiest, so we really should work on that as well.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'd like to move that we direct the city attorney to prepare language for consideration on the November 2024 ballot, authorizing a potential bond for the city of South Miami. Do you need us to provide you with direction on the amount, or can we rely on you to work with the city manager and his financial team to suggest an appropriate borrowing amount to bring back for consideration on the 18th? Assuming we,
Says the latter.
yeah,
So just, we can certainly work with the manager, that's not a problem. We would probably advertise the largest amount that was even in the realm of possibility.
so let me just,
You want to give me a heart attack?
No, so that you
you
can.
have the flexibility to reduce it.
Exactly, you have the
Yeah.
flexibility to reduce it,
So-
so that there's no question that you went over it.
So, Madam Vice Mayor, here's what I'd like to, because I did spend some time bothering Mr. Riverall on his vacation this week about this. And so I think if you recall our presentation, the maximum amount that our FA and he presented to us was $87 million. That's certainly not what I would like to suggest that we end up on.
Just made my chest hurt.
Well, you know, you got a strong heart. I would, if you need a number, I would like to suggest $65 million.
The outer.
Which would be the outer limit, right? Just to kind of give us a working number. We can discuss whether that's the right number to land on. If you guys, I don't know what the pleasure of the board is with respect to a number.
I'm leaving this to you. We could duke it out on the 18th.
I think it'd be great to hear from Mr. Riverall on the range he thinks what would be the most effective lowest and the most practical highest.
Did he do that? Did he do that? I feel like he did that.
But most effective low.
Yeah, he
We
said-
shared a scenario that had a range, just for purposes of this commission to understand what that would represent in debt service on an annual basis. As the mayor mentioned, the calculation was made by our financial advisor as to our debt capacity, which was in the tune of $87 million. So something in the order of magnitude of $50 million was about a $3.2 million debt service on an annual basis. So if you're up to 65 million, you're probably talking an order of magnitude about $4 million debt service on an annual basis. We could clean up the list that was provided May 7th because some things have been updated since we've been working on projects, and we can clean up that list, update some numbers, and share that list again for your review as this item is being drafted, and then we can meet with you individually as well to have that conversation. So to answer Commissioner Corey on that range, we have provided that from a order of magnitude. Now, that also means, I think about $65 million would equate to 1.4 of a mil, but remember that we're retiring debt. So we have debt that's going to come off our books here in the next about 5 years. I think it's the first issuance that we may retire, and then
Less,
some
yeah.
additional debt in another. So, and then we don't issue that all at once, right? These projects are scheduled through the life of a bond program, so you see some things come in at different times. So anyhow, it's a little bit of a recap of the information we provided May 7th, but we'll update that list and share it. And then any other ideas that you may have that may not be on that list, certainly we can work on.
Is it fair then to say that we should look to Mr. Riverall to give us his best
Yes, no, I,
stab at what we could do without physical pain?
so, that last part, I think what I would ask the managers to just recommend what they think is an appropriate authorization amount. Again, how much pain we can tolerate is not a question we have to decide with the adoption of this item, because ultimately we've got to come back, even assuming the charter is changed in August, we have to come back and by a majority vote to issue 65 or.
But I'm not saying us, I'm saying Mr. Riverall.
No, I understand. So I've had quite a bit of conversation with him. $87 million based on the presentation they made was kind of the outer limit of what we can authorize based on charter and financial requirements, statutory requirements. And then we had scenarios of, I think, 35 and 50 million, Mr. Manager,
35 to
that were
50.
that were in the presentations and the commensurate debt service. So I just said, let me go a little bit above what they presented. So we're at 65. So if we want to bring that number down further, we have some room to talk. I didn't think anybody would want to be in the realm of 87 million by way of the outlier number. But again, that's a number that when the discussion is had, hopefully on this item, we can try to right-size that further, okay?
And Mr. Mayor, those calculations were made on a conservative 5% taxable value growth. So this year, we were a little bit over 6%. And we know there's some other projects coming online, so that may be, really conservative as it relates to a 5% growth. So I just all those numbers were predicated on that taxable value growth.
Okay.
Look forward.
Further questions? None? Okay, so I'd like to move that we direct the city attorney to prepare language for consideration by the voters in a referendum in November for the authorization of a general obligation bond. I just say for purpose of advertising, let's set the amount at $65 million. And unless someone wants to suggest 87 million, she's gonna make me choke. And that would be the motion. Is there a second?
There's a second.
Okay, so moved by myself, a second by Commissioner Kaye. Any further discussion? Okay, well, I'm sure we're gonna have plenty on the 18th. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Great, motion carries. Okay, along the same lines, can you read item 5, please?
Yes, charter amendment, $5,000 purchasing threshold.
Okay. So colleagues, as you know, the manager has long wanted us to have the public consider a change to the charter in terms of the procurement threshold, which is currently at $5,000. Again, the discussion is intended to basically result, hopefully, in direction to the city attorney to prepare a language to allow for a modification of that procurement threshold. Mr. Manager, is there an amount, I know there's an amount you recommended, I believe there's also a recommendation recently from our Budget and Finance Committee on this item. If you could share it with us, that would be appreciated.
So Budget and Finance had approached it from a standpoint of allowing the legislation to let this commission set it from time to time. And so to give that flexibility instead of having that fixed amount in a charter. From our standpoint, you see cities that are similar in size between a $25,000 and $50,000 authorization for a manager from a spend standpoint. So we would be looking at a number in that range. We would be recommending a number in that range.
so-
If that's the will, then we would, kind of define that a little bit more.
So I guess then the question for us is, do we want to specify a threshold that would be memorialized in the charter? Or do we want to reserve that to this commission or future commissions to set via ordinance as a limit? Okay, that's kind of the policy question we have to decide, in addition to saying that we want to put this out for consideration. Any thoughts on whether we want to specify an amount or reserve that authority to the commission?
I feel like we've seen the issue of having a single number in the charter and how that impacts our ability to function, so I'd prefer to leave it to the commission.
I second that.
Second,
I-
agree with that as
I
well?
agree with
Okay, I think we're unanimous on that point, so is there a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare ballot language for November?
I'll move it.
Okay,
I'll second.
so again, the motion would be to Prepare the language with a reservation on the amount for determination by the city commission. Okay? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have two resolutions, an add-on, and consent agenda item. Anyone want to move consent agenda item 1 after the clerk reads it into the record?
I'll move it.
Second.
After she reads it, but there you go.
A resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to issue a notice of intent to withdraw from the public risk management of Florida insurance pool.
Okay.
I'll move the motion, Mayor.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kaya, a second by the Vice Mayor. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Item passes 4-0.
Thank you. If you can read item 2, please.
It's item 2, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving a proposal and project agreement with J&M Engineering, PC, DBA, M&J Engineering to provide design services for the parking lot improvement project at South Miami Park in amount not to exceed $133,960.
Thank you for that. Are any questions on this item of the manager? No?
I do have questions.
Mr. Kaya, Commissioner Kaya, you're recognized.
I have questions for the director, if you don't mind.
Mr. Director, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Quinn. Can you give us what the intent of the design, like what is it that we're trying to do here?
Yeah, so a number of things. The first is the resurfacing, restriping, marking, things like that for the parking lot. Lighting is a very important factor in this project as well. There is currently no parking lot lighting. There's a safety concern at the moment. So lighting would definitely improve the parking area. Directional signage is part of this project. Traffic calming devices. As you come in on 58th Avenue and you enter the park, we did informally put some, speed humps, things like that, but we want to make that a little bit more formal. So traffic calming devices. I'm asking that the consultant look into drainage improvements, doing their surveying, seeing if there's any drainage infrastructure that we need to take advantage of in this design study. So that's included. Accessibility upgrades. If you look at the, for example, the ramps where you enter onto the playing field, those 2 ramps are not ADA accessible. Signage regarding handicap accessibility, things like that, how people get out their car where they're parking at now, there's curbing that blocks their doors when they get out their car. That makes no sense. So we're asking them to look into that aspect of the project. The entrance of the park is blah at the moment. I want something that draws people attention, that really opens people's eyes up and really, makes the park look good as soon as you walk in. So rather than that 10-foot fence when you're walking in, some sort of marquee entrance gate marker or whatever it may be as they come in. And last but not least, I'm asking the consultant, or part of this project is to look at all the unofficial parking that's taking place in the park right now, designating that as parking, seeing where there's opportunities to expand the parking capacity, but do it in a very formal and official way. People are parking on, the grassy areas, they're parking along the fence. I'm looking to see if we can make that more official. We currently have 92 parking spaces there. If we take a very less aggressive approach, we can go from 90 to about 35 more parking spaces, increase to 125. If we take a very aggressive approach, we can go 60 more parking spaces, which would take it up to 150. So again, all the informal parking that's currently taking place now, I'm asking the consultant to look into making that official and just redoing our entire parking lot to make it more safe, accessible, and usable.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Corey, you're recognized.
I was going to ask, along with that entrance, I know that the sidewalk currently ends as you approach the gate, and there isn't a pedestrian entrance there. Is that part of the design plans to finish the sidewalk and create a pedestrian gate?
So I've asked them to look at all accessibility issues, entering the park within that parking capacity and going onto the actual playing field. So that will be a part of their work scope. So that sidewalk that you're you're speaking of, how we can make that more safer. How do they get in, ingress, egress, things like that. So that will be a part of their scope.
Okay, and this is a wish list item. I mean, I know no matter how much we increase the parking, it's really like a behavioral problem, I think, on the most part. Like every kid that's there, two parents come from different places from work to go and meet the kid. There's 2 cars per every kid. You know, you're never gonna have enough parking. But if we're doing this and there is any opportunity to work with the school for excess parking, that would be amazing. Because again, no matter what we do, I mean, I do want to optimize, I do want to create more spaces. We're not going to have enough parking there. So anything, if there is anything we could do from a design perspective to even prepare for sharing the space or talk to them about it, that'd be a great opportunity to do it since we're only going to have one shot when we redesign this.
Understood, will do. As you may not be aware of, when we have games on Saturday, soccer game, tournaments, things like that.
They use it, right?
We do use the school's parking lot, so we have a pretty decent relationship with the principal and things like that. So we've used it on the past when you first come on. 58th, the teachers' parking area, I think it's like 15 spots right there. Then if you go further, you know, towards the east, there's the big parking lot that we used in the past. From our experience, folks just don't like walking all the way from that.
I was going to suggest to you, I think, you know, to piggyback on Commissioner Corey's point, Mr. Director, I think the opportunity would be to envision where we would want to add parking that would be adjacent to our parking apron on their campus. I mean, I think the physical plan of that school should change over time, likely will change. And so if we can identify a way to integrate some parking that would work well with our existing parking apron, that could be shared parking for both facilities, beyond what they have today, that's on the east side, that's not accessible, that would be at least a good kind of visioning sub-element to this, whether it gets executed in the near term or not.
Understood.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion on item 2, or do we have one?
I move the item.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Commissioner Corey, a second by Commissioner Kaye. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Item passes 4-0.
Great. Madam Clerk, I skipped over N1. Do we need to have you read that into the record? We don't need action on that, do we?
No action.
Okay, just notice. Perfect. If you can read item 3, please.
Yes. A resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving the reduction of curbside recycling to bi-weekly pickup, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an amendment to the interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County Department of Solid Waste Management for curbside recycling services.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Vice Mayor, I believe this is your item, if you'd like to introduce it.
Yes. We've had various discussions on the effectiveness of the recycling pickup, how much is actually getting recycled, are we seeing a benefit, and is that benefit commensurate with the soaring costs, the continuously soaring cost of having the additional recycling, well, recycling in general, and, you know, to compound that, the weekly recycling. I'm proposing that we go back to every other week. I don't see where the cost benefits us as residents. I understand, and I do hear when people say, well, if you recycle every week, you're more responsible about recycling. I don't know that that's the case. I think if you are an avid recycler, you will recycle, and if you're not, you won't. But adding kind of insult to injury on a compounding scale when it comes to costs is not feasible in my eyes for our small city. So I'm proposing that we go back to every other week pickup.
Questions of the Vice Mayor? Anyone? Commissioner Kaye, you're recognized.
Sorry, Mayor. Vice Mayor, I appreciate you trying to be a little bit more cost efficient on what we're doing, but I think we're seeing overall problems throughout the county and through the nation with our garbage and the need for recycling. I think that Gray was here and she spoke really eloquent on, and it's really what I believe as well, is that we need to encourage more recycling by cutting it back one day per week or once every 2 weeks. It shows a message that we're not for that stuff, and I think that we need to be more progressive and we need to continue to do that. In my household, and maybe I'm an outlier and I don't know that, but from my personal opinion and pretty much anybody in my neighborhood, Recycling is a big thing. My recycling bin is full every week. I talked to the city manager, he's like, well, you can always order another bin. But I think that you'll see that a lot of people are recycling and it's continuing to improve. I think we need to do a better job, and we've had questions with our county to see how we continue to improve that marketing-wise in the city as well. So I would tell you that on the contrary, I think that we just need to have more people recycling and do a better job of communicating what's recyclable and how do we expand this. So I'm going to vote no on that.
Okay,
Before we get into debate, because I have some questions, and so let's just take questions, and I'll recognize you to address his comments. That's okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Commissioner Corey, did you have something you wanted to ask, or
Yes.
make some comments on the item?
I just wanted to make some comments. on the item.
I'm going to ask you to hold those for a second. Just want to follow up on some questions. Mr. Manager, when does the term of our current contract expire with this recycling company?
I'm gonna have to see if John, you remember exactly the end date? We had an extension. The county was going through.
I thought it was March of 2025, if that's.
Yeah, I have to double check, because I
Okay.
just don't want to give you bad info. The county is going through a resolicitation.
Of this contract currently?
Correct. And this item is going to be going to committee, I'm hearing pretty soon.
Okay.
At the county and then commission. So they do it by zones. So we're kind of awaiting that, and that'll trigger a new contract. But because of that, there were extensions provided, and I don't remember the exact date.
So to either you or the director, just in terms of that solicitation process, do we anticipate it's going to close before our budget process concludes?
I talked to the county, they're supposed to go to commission tomorrow. They don't know.
Not commission, John, just.
Committee?
Committee, yeah, it's not tomorrow. It's going to go to committee, I heard next week.
So
And
yeah,
then
the
it would
only-
go to commission.
Got it, yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think they only have one county commission meeting, which is the 16th
Yeah.
of this month left, so before they break in August. So I want to get a sense of the schedule, because again, speaking to cost escalation, right now it's moderately more expensive. I'm just curious to see how much more expensive this could possibly get after that solicitation is completed. So we may or may not have an idea by September, Mr. Manager, Mr. Director, about where that cost could end up?
On the recycling, we will, given what I was told as far as
Okay.
that timeline. On the tipping fees and things like that, that's going to be a little bit later.
We have no, that's not something we can opt in or out of. We're in
Yeah,
that system either way.
But from a budget standpoint and populating that into our budget, we
Understood.
may not know till September. Last time, we didn't know till October, unfortunately.
But again, we
Yeah.
can debate the merits of recycling or not, just in terms of what we have to do. Waste disposition is a mandate. Recycling is kind of optional, for us at least, right? Okay. Okay, so hopefully by the time we get back into our budget process, we'll have at least some cost information on the recycling aspect of our solid waste program.
Yes, and
Okay.
there's also a 3% cap on that too, on the increase.
A 3% cap on the increase to households or on the increase under the contract?
The increase under the contract.
Okay, but that contract is expiring, so
Yeah.
is that cost cap continue?
I don't know the terms because the item hasn't been made public yet.
Okay.
And we'll get our hands on it quickly. If it is going to go to committee next week, then we'll get our hands on it pretty quickly, probably by the end of the week potentially. So we'll know what those new terms are.
Okay. If we can, I'd just like to get some information on what those terms are, as kind of real time as we find out. If we can, Mr. Manager, kind of get that to all of us, I'd appreciate it. On the same token, or by the same token, have we gotten any information from this provider about what is actually happening with the items that are recycling and if they're actually being recycled or diverted into our landfills?
The county had, and we had the representative from the county here that discussed it, and her statement was everything.
I don't, but she's not, with all due respect to that person, she's not aware of what's happening in the solid waste stream, at least as I understand her position.
Well, it's their program, so they're the ones that oversee the program.
But I'm saying from the department, I mean, that's honestly where I want to, Mr. Reese's equivalent at the county, who kind of oversees the handling of the waste stream. That person was a Durham employee, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
She is a solid waste employee in charge of the recycling program.
Oh, she is?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, then
That's
I'm
what
mistaken.
saying. It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm mistaken. I thought it was someone in another department.
No,
My
that's
error.
what I'm saying, that
My error.
we, we
Yeah.
brought her purposely for that, to hear from the county
Okay.
at that time. Her comment that day was, everything that gets placed in a bin that is recyclable gets recycled. The problem is the contamination, right? And so when it gets contaminated, then you have the big drop-off on what gets recycled, right?
She did give a number on that too.
I'm sorry?
She gave a number.
Yeah, and different places have different contamination rates, right? Different cities, and, it's part of an education process to educate folks to maybe not put things in that, like plastic bags that'll impact contamination.
Okay, but I just want to, let me just add, what I want to be, and again, if you can bring back some information again, get them to reaffirm this. The horror stories I hear is we put all our stuff in the bin, it can be perfectly clean, right? Set aside the contamination issues, I know that's a problem, right? But at the end of the day, if there's no market for buying the items being recycled, right? There's no market for the plastics, there's no market for the cardboard, whatever's getting into that bin, right? Ultimately, it's getting landfilled. And so what I'm hoping to understand is, yes, it's being recycled, maybe it's being sent to a seller or a buyer who's buying it in bulk and paying the county pennies on the dollar for that trash, and making, a 10% markup, but they're only selling 15% of that entire waste haul, and then they're just disposing of the rest to make their profit. So what I want to understand is really what's happening down the line, not just when they sell it to a third party, but is it really, you used to get sent to China overseas or the Philippines, you see all sorts of stories in the news about, stuff getting washed up on shores there. I mean, for a long time, it feels like recycling in the U.S. was basically offshoring our waste, right? As opposed to landfilling it domestically. I just want to understand, because again, I want to encourage recycling, but I want to do it with my eyes open. And because it also, the other educational part is not just how we dispose of it, but understanding what we buy as consumers creates a market for that stuff so they can get reused, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm being, a responsible public servant and advocate in that regard, and beyond informing people how to do it correctly, also how to buy correctly so that we actually are creating the markets, right? In our own procurement practices, something we talked to Mr. Kulik about, I know that at the state level, there was not a real strong market for glass products, but a lot of the glass aggregate was being used in actually as part of the roadway aggregate for repaving. And so the state was doing some things on that front to kind of encourage the reuse of glass. Again, I'm not an expert in any of this information, but I do want to just get a window into what's happening on the back end. And so I would ask, for the benefit of that information, Madam Vice Mayor, my preference on this item would be for us to kind of give staff the time to get a sense of where we're going to be from a contract perspective here under the new provider, whoever that is, whether it's Coastal, who's doing the work today, or whoever else the county selects. So we have a full cost picture going forward. We're not just looking at I think it's a 50,000 differential today, and maybe get some more information about what's actually happening with that waste as opposed to taking action to make this decision today. Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I do not disagree, but I would also like to know now if there's any price point where we step away from the ideology and step into the practicality. If the answer is, I don't care how much it costs us, raise our taxes, don't raise our taxes, take it away from the plants, whatever it is. If we're not willing to make that decision, then I don't feel that it is fair to our staff to ask them to do the legwork if we're gonna sit on, I don't care, I'm gonna recycle every week anyway. You know what I mean? So I'd like to know kind of how Commissioner Corey and Commissioner Kaya feel about it, because I don't wanna waste our staff's time any more of their time. You know what I mean?
Yes, go ahead. Commissioner Corey.
So if we were to discover that none of our recycling is actually being recycled, I think the board and its very practical mindset would not want to continue into the recycling program. If it became cost prohibitive where we were paying just very, very excessive amounts, we could consider something like that. I've actually reached out to the city as well, and I might try to get a little bit more detail on this, but I was even considering the idea of maybe bringing that in-house. Right now, we can't really see much on our own metrics on how we recycle. I spoke with Public Works. They said they might not even need to buy a new truck. They would just have to maybe get 2 new people to staff, we would actually be able to potentially collect our own recycling, measure that collection, maybe even measure the contamination, maybe get better at recycling than the county. I know parts of Broward have like 10% contamination rates. What I wouldn't want to do necessarily, and what it concerns me here is obviously you have the $50,000 cost saving. Some of that's a cost transfer because people will throw more trash away, which will go into tipping fees. So it's not a perfect 50,000. Of course, that could go up in October. It's a consideration we're all considering. But if we do put more pressure on the landfills, it is going to push up the tipping fees much quicker. We know that landfills are the third highest greenhouse gas emitter after fossil fuels and farming. So it's just it is a real concern, I think, and our city definitely has a green mentality, a green forward mentality. So I do think that we'll try to hold on to recycling, but maybe there's a smarter way for us to do that. And that's what I always love about you bringing these items forward, is maybe we can find a smarter way to do it. Because I don't think anybody in the county is even pleased with how waste management's going right now. And we as a city, if we have the ability to do it better, smarter, that's really what our residents are looking for. That's why we're incorporated. So just a thought.
Commissioner Gaia?
Yeah, just real quickly to add to that, I've met 3 or 4 companies just in the last 6 months that I've been doing a lot of tech summits and a lot of things like that. There's a big push in this world for manufacturing to recycle a lot of the products that are being recycled. They add some type of resins to convert it for tires, for different materials. So it's continuing to evolve. Obviously, it's really capital intensive and it's going to take a while to get there, but it's moving.
So I just addressed your comment. So I would encourage you guys to read a book called The End of the Earth. Okay, it's not in the particular section.
Not a light read.
It's not a light read. I read it as it's an audio book I listened to on a long drive home from Tallahassee. And what I will tell you is the most cynical part about recycling in some ways is that it's an invention of the American Petroleum Manufacturers Association, right? Because they quickly realized when they were going to create a consumer culture around disposable items, they thought people might one day wake up and say, well, where's all this trash going, right? And so, my concern is I want to encourage a culture of reuse, right? It's one of the 3 R's. But I also want to go in eyes wide open that it's not something that's going to happen unless we're intentional about it. And so to the extent that we as a small city can begin to understand what's actually happening with our waste stream and shed some light on it, whether we choose to spend the incremental $50,000 to try to make those practices more effective and better, but it's a choice we have to make. But I don't want to make that decision without understanding what's actually happening. Because my general default is we shouldn't be encouraging more recycling. But I'm not so naive as to say that there's not a world where, for producers of plastic items, the profits in creating new plastic items is much higher than the profits that may exist in recycling or creating recyclable plastic items. So hopefully that addresses your concern.
I think it's great that you say that, because I think, fortunately for a lot of us, we're idealistic about recycling, and your comment shows at least that you have listened to the audiobook that tells you the reality of what I've heard from people in that industry.
Let's figure out I just want to figure out if it's really a fairy tale or if there's really something we can do there to make this something that's viable for our society. So anyhow.
So when are we holding?
So
yeah,
we're not going to get the answers from asking anybody on our staff to go do that, right? Like you don't get those answers from that because they're going to be fed from the same place. What I've seen other commissioners in the county do, and maybe we should do ourselves, is really do a tour. I saw a commissioner.
I know, but we don't. The problem with the tour, Commissioner Guy, is we see the collection process, we see how it's processed. We don't see where it's sold, and where it's sold, whether that's actually put into a process where it's reused, or where it's actually just discarded by that third party, right? And so I think that's where we're going to understand what's really happening in this process. It's not that I take the comments of our colleague at the county on their face that, everything they're collecting, they're selling to a recycling vendor who believes there's a market. But the truth is there really a market, once it's sold to that person? Or are we just really just redirecting the waste? So, look, this is an incredibly, again, we're living a moment in our county where how we handle our trash and our waste is of paramount importance, right, to our little region of the world's continued growth and evolution. And, you know, if we can help create a window into what is happening or what is not happening, I say we take full advantage of it. And I know it's an imposition on our staff, but, you know, we were last year talking about a moratorium on all growth in this county because if we can't figure out where we dispose our waste, right? That's the kind of related impacts that this issue has on our ability to kind of grow as a city, as a county. So I for one would love to figure out what's happening. We're in a position where we're privileged to ask these questions, and I'd like to ask them and see what answers come back.
All right.
Okay. So would you have any objection to tabling this item and bringing it back in the context of our first budget hearing with information from the city manager on the lines that we've requested?
That works.
Okay. So I'd move to table this item until, what would be our first budget hearing, Madam Clerk?
It will be, the first budget hearing is Tuesday, September 3rd.
September 3rd? Because I'd move to table this item to September 3rd and have it come back onto the agenda at that point in time for some further discussion.
Perfect.
Okay. Would you second that?
Yes.
Okay, so a motion and a second. Any objection to tabling the item until September 3rd?
No, Mayor.
No.
Hearing none, we'll move it till the September 3rd agenda. Okay, anything else for the good of the order, colleagues?
Nope.
Okay, seeing no further business before this commission.
We have
we
to
st-
add-
The add-on,
oh,
the add-on item.
the add-on item. Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah, see?
Yes.
We have a resolution to move our meeting from July 16th to July 18th. Any concerns about that request?
I'll move the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kaye,
I'll second.
a second by the Vice Mayor. Madam Clerk, do you need a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes,
Item passes 4-0.
great. Can see no further business before this commission. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you.